this meeting to order. If we can rise, there is a flag over to my left for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can everyone hear me? No?
I can.
Tom?
What?
How about now?
Perfect.
There we go. All right, I'd ask that all board members, we've had a couple of meetings recently where folks have not been able to listen. I would encourage board members to speak into the microphone, lean in like I am, and I would encourage those of you who can't hear, we got some room up front. Move a little closer. Plenty of room. Okay, I was not able to make it to the last meeting, but from what I understand, everything went swimmingly, and I encourage Steve to run more of these in the future. I want to remind board members, well, I guess I'm going to ask the question first. Have all of you received copies of the superintendent evaluation that needs to be filled out? You have? Okay. I need that completed back to myself or Steve by the 21st, and that also goes for members of the ad team who have not completed yet. Okay. We're reaching the end of the school year. This means something. I'm not sure what that is. I've been out of school for so long, I guess my biological clock doesn't work in those cycles, even though I have 2 kids in school. But some of the staff have expressed to me, and the phrase was, they're experiencing a happy fatigue. It sounds like a good thing, but I hope that you get over it soon. One other thing I wanted to comment on, and I need to address this with the board, it's something we've overlooked the past few years. If you look on the back of your agenda, you see the list of upcoming events we have. I'd encourage all board members to make an effort to participate in a couple of these end of the year ceremonies. It's a great opportunity to celebrate work that's being done in the district, and in particular, I want the board members to understand that chairs are specifically set up at the high school graduation, at the Morse graduation, for board members in the front of the ceremony. So if there's of any of these that you can attend, I strongly encourage you to make the high school graduation. If you cannot make the high school graduation, please get back to either Jay or Patrick and let them know so that there isn't an empty chair there for you. I want to again thank the administration for their school reports. I particularly enjoyed the piece from Fisher Mitchell about the interpretation by a particular student of the word impossible to read or to mean I'm possible. That was a great piece, very inspiring. I was also surprised to read that there's been a lack of participation by West Bath incoming kindergarten students in the district pre-K program. Is that true, or was that a typo? Yeah.
It is true. However, I will say this year, we've just got in our applicants for this year, and there are quite a few West Bath.
Good.
May have been an off year. I don't know.
I hope that was the case.
I hope so too.
So, With that said, we will move on to item 4.0, approve and amend minutes of April 28th and May 6th. We will begin with the May 28th minutes, excuse me. Is there a motion on those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Move to approve by Dave, seconded by Steve. Any additions, omissions? Kyle?
I have one.
Could you please speak into the, thank you.
I have one clarification. Steve had, I think it's accurate what he said, but I just wanted to clear where Steve had said he responded to the board feels that we're in compliance. I don't know that the whole board does on that, and I don't know how you want that written.
It's up to you, or Steve, I guess.
Where it says you responded that the board feels that we're in compliance with the foreign language requirements.
Does it say?
Paragraph 2, public forum, FY 2015 school budget section, bottom of the first page.
Yeah, we could amend that. I mean, I think at that point in the meeting, I turned to Patrick and I reaffirmed with Patrick that it's his opinion that we are in compliance.
That's what I was clarifying.
But it's not, you're right, it's not specifically. I mean, if you want to draw the distinction between his comment that he feels the district is in compliance and whether the board feels he's in compliance, then you might recommend a word change.
Yeah, I'd recommend a change if you really accept the change.
I would just say that responded that the district feels we are in compliance. Feels is not the right word, but
Believes.
Yeah.
Or maybe even be clearer than that, say, responded based on information received from the superintendent, believes that the district is in compliance.
That would be good.
That's fine.
That sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay. So, Dave, are you happy with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of April 28th with one amendment. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, we'll move on to the minutes of May 6th. Is there motion to approve by Steve? Seconded by Jennifer. Any further discussion? Any changes? Okay, all those in favor of approving those minutes or approving the motion, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, we'll move on to item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Any?
We have one.
Pass this to you. You got that one, Judy?
We have one adjustment, nomination for pre-K teacher at Woolwich.
Okay, item 6.0, public session. If anybody from the public would like to speak, the microphone is here. If you would, just please come up, state your name. We do have two public comment sections. The first one we use for items that are related to the agenda. If there's something that you want to speak to that's not on the agenda, I would ask that you wait until the second public comment session. So is there anyone who would like to speak to something on the agenda? Okay, no one from the public. We will move on to staff reports, item 7.0. We have one staff report today, an update on the pre-K program with Rosalie Perkins. Judy, do you want to take that over?
Whoever, take it away.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for supporting pre-K all of these years. Without your support, this would not have gone forward. We would not be expanding. So for all of us, I want to express my appreciation. The reason that I'm here this evening, I believe, is because the board was interested to know what the performance is among our pre-K sites. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I would like to address. You have before you some data. You have 2 pages. So if you could pull that out, it's kind of complicated, so I'm just going to walk through it, and please stop me if you have questions. This assessment is called the Children's Progress Academic Assessment. It is under the umbrella of the NWEA assessments that all of the schools in RSU1 do use. This particular assessment is geared toward pre-K children, and it is tied to the main early childhood learning results. This isn't comparing children to other children nationally or statewide. It's comparing their performance to what is expected of children in the pre-K years. That you have one with a leaf on it and one with a green flower. The leaf is the results from fall, and the green one is results from spring. We do use this 3 times a year, but I thought it more manageable to give you fall and spring, since that's what we're really comparing. This is an assessment that the children do themselves. It's done on a laptop without interference from adults. We are allowed to, help them if something technologically goes wrong, but we cannot help them with any of the answering. So if you look at fall, you see literacy and math concepts. And if you look at the key, it's blue is above expectation, green is at expectation, yellow is approaching, and red is below. And these expectations, again, are based on the main early childhood learning guidelines. If you look at the fall, you see where the children are falling. And this is aggregate scores for all of the sites, all 7 sites put together. And below those green bars, you can see aggregately, we are in the fall, and we're all at expectation. If you look at the numbers below that, where you see the little heads, it tells you how many children in RSU1 scored above, at, approaching, or below in all of those literacy concepts. And then you go down to mathematics, it's the same thing. In mathematics, aggregate-wise, RSU1 was above expectation in measurement, and the other 2 fall at expectation. And again, you see how many children fell at each grade. Now, if you take that and compare it to the green one, you have 2 sheets. You should have one that shows the green one, the green spring report. If you put those side by side, you just pull them apart. I think yours are stapled together. If you put them side by side, you'll notice under the literacy, you can see the significant gains the children made over the year, particularly in phonics and phonemic awareness. When we saw those results in the fall, we had 23 children below expectation in phonics writing and 25 below in phonemic awareness. And that was astonishing to us. So we said, what are we going to do? So we ramped up our classroom work around those areas. We did some professional development. And if you will look at spring now under those 2 concepts, phonics and phonemic awareness, look how we moved the number of children in the red or below expectation over, and increased the number of children in the above expectation. So this, again, is all of the 7 sites together. And without going over everything right now, you can take a look at how math also compares. And then when you get to the bottom, you see where it says literacy grade concept scores per school. The scores are broken down at each site. You can compare, we don't have the names, but you can see how all of the 7 sites scored. They're not colored, so it makes it a little harder to follow, but you can see the number score for those. And some of the sites that scored low, like next to the bottom, the row that's next to the bottom, there's a 2.9 under listening in the fall. You go to spring, and it's now a 3.3. So even though there were low scores there's been significant progress in all of the sites. Some of the areas not so much, some of the areas significantly more. And then the next page shows you the math breakdown at each site. This is a lot of numbers to look at, so it's confusing. You may want to sit with it when you have a chance to really analyze it. On that last page, you will also see the overall progress for all of the sites together from fall to spring. It shows you green, fall, winter green, spring blue. So you can see how there has been improvement in all of the areas over the year. Does that make sense? It's a little
does.
It's a little overwhelming.
I'm going to jump in for a second, Rosalie.
Okay.
I think the data that the board's really interested in is the scores for the individual schools.
They're there.
And and I'd like to focus on that.
Okay.
Our goal for this year, and I'll read it to you, was to develop by the end of the year a tool to evaluate the effectiveness and performance of our individual providers that serve our pre-K program. Build the tool, apply the tool, and then present the outcome of that evaluation to the board. So I think the board's really interested not in the cumulative scores, but in how the individual providers are doing relative to the expectations of the district and relative to each other. Because I know they provide very different
Right.
curriculums.
Right, and you see that here. That's all listed right there. Do you see where it is? It's down here, where it says site schools, we've whited that out. So that
Right.
we're not pitting one school against another.
Sure.
And if you can talk to Patrick about gaining that. But if you want to compare the scores, you can see they're all pretty much, all doing very well. Do you see how that's comparing each site?
Sure.
And if you also compare from fall to spring, you'll see each site has gone up.
So talk to me about this tool that the district's developed to evaluate each of the sites.
This is evaluating each of the sites.
So this is the only tool that we have.
That's the only tool that we have right now.
These scores.
That's right. What other information would you like?
In terms of, are we doing, just as we do with classrooms, are we doing observations on a regular basis? Are we doing evaluations? When are those occurring? Are there standards that we have set within each of the programs? Or, are we hands-off regarding that?
No, there are pre-K standards that apply to all of the pre-K sites. They have to meet all of those expectations. Our classroom sites are observed by the principals, and I'm hoping that next year, the person who is the coordinator for the program next year will have the opportunity to go around to the sites and be more a part of that. Each of the sites that are off campus are held to very high standards by the National Association for the Education of Young Children and are reviewed every 5 years, I believe it is. So they have to meet those standards. Their standards are more restrictive and more stringent than ours are in the public school. But this will tell you how our children are performing.
Performing, sure.
And I guess that's what I was focusing on, is you wanted to know the performance. And this tells you at each site how that classroom is performing in literacy and math. And what isn't captured here is how well these children are doing socially and emotionally and confidence-wise. When they come in the fall, they haven't got a clue how to be part of a group, most of them. Some have been in other settings where they've had a chance to, been in a play group or whatever. But they come into our program pretty shy and not really understanding what this is all about. And they come out with such confidence and love of learning that totally sets the stage for future, kindergarten through high school. That's a very big piece of it, which we cannot capture here. I will also tell you that the state of Maine is reviewing the pre-K standards, and as part of that, they are going to have what's called it's a classroom observation learning assessment. They're training people to come out and observe sites. I have volunteered us to be one of the sites that they are actually going to go around to each classroom and do what you're saying, not to evaluate to say we got you, but to evaluate and say, this is, perhaps you could do this to make it a little bit stronger. It's evaluation and support. I should say observation and support, and it will happen 3 times a year. In order to have something consistent across sites, we really had to have a boxed assessment, if you so to speak. But I think this pretty clearly tells that all of the sites are performing very well. None of these scores are in the red down here. Like, let's say school A in the spring is performing at a 3.8. That is above expectation. Reading, 3.7. Phonics, 2.9, which is at expectation. Phonemic awareness, 3.1, at expectation. That's one site right across that row. And then you go down to the next site, site B, 3.6, 3.5, 3, 2.9. Nothing here is below expectation. And most everything is at or above. So if we wanted to compare the sites, which I have done, everyone is pretty well, doing pretty well. And I also would like to say that we have had school for 80 days this year, 80 half days this year. The other classes have had 150 school days. We've had 3 half days of school every week. So I would urge you to really consider helping us add that 4th day. Maybe then we would have all the red flags moved over. So from my perspective, I think they're doing very well. But if you want to look, if you want to compare the exact sites, you'll have to, speak to Patrick about that as far as, putting this out in the public.
Sure. Are there any other questions? Any questions for Rosalie? Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, Rosalie. I think this is a wonderful program, and I just can't hear enough about early education. And I have been temporarily in a kindergarten classroom and walked away with such immense appreciation for not just the cognitive teaching, but the socialization with the, just understanding of space and social development, all those things. And I have to go that one of the people I admire most, our former Attorney General Steve Rowe, has talked long and hard about the importance of early education, and I just respect all that he talks about. But when I worked for Woolwich Central School, I was a math person, so I looked at the math numbers immediately, and I noticed that from the spring to the fall, at expectation and numeracy went down a little bit.
But patterns and functions went way up.
Exactly, that's what I was about.
Because that's what we focused on, because in the fall we said, what aren't we doing here?
Yeah.
So we, ramped that up.
Yeah.
And I will say that in the spring assessment is far more difficult than the fall and the winter.
Okay.
And one of the things that I didn't focus on that was in that assessment was first, second, third, fourth, that order. And that was some of the questions. And I think that's how we went down in some of those. And I would like to say that we get this sheet, a sheet like this on every child, and then we look at the makeup of the entire class and say, as a teacher, I need to do such and such. or I've done such and such, why isn't this child moving? So we have found this to be a very effective tool. I wish I had some way to tell you more of what you want. I'm not sure until we get that assessment through the state what else I can offer you.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is a good start. I think that when the board was developing goals for this year, this board for a long time has supported pre-K.
Yeah,
and we've strongly, we've consistently funded pre-K for a number of years. At times we've received some criticism within the community saying, why do you continue to put dollars towards something that isn't required by the state? Divert those dollars towards things that are required.
Of course.
And we've stood by this program. But I think one of the questions that came up this year as we were formulating goals was to say, the pre-K program here is unique because we not only have a pre-K program in-house, but we're working collaboratively with outside providers, hand in hand. And so we want to make sure that we're spending our resources wisely and that the outside providers, whomever they may be, are giving us the same performance that we have within the district, so that somebody down the road doesn't come and say, not only are you funding a program that's not required by the state, but you're also diverting those dollars outside of the district and you really have no oversight of those. We want to be able to say, yes, we do have oversight. Here's the tools that we use. We do this evaluation, we do these visitations, we do this, and we feel confident that at each of those 7 sites, they are performing at a level that meets the expectations of RSU.
Right, and I think you have some of that information there.
Yep.
I think the decision to increase the coordinator's position to 2 days a week will allow that person to actually visit sites. This year, it was me, and I was teaching at the time everyone else was teaching, so impossible for me to do that. So, and that's why we wanted to make a change in that so there would be someone able to go to all the sites to visit regularly. And I think that combined with the class assessment that the state will be providing for us should give you more information. But I do believe that this is really strong data that you have here that says these sites are really pretty equitable. And the ones that aren't, the ending scores that aren't equitable have shown the same percentage of increase as the others. Some of the baseline scores came in low. But if you look at the improvement over time, you'll see that the percentage of improvement was significant.
Yeah, and that's reassuring.
And I would be glad to sit down with you anytime and really go over it. There's a lot of stuff here, and it's kind of hard, when you've got other things going on, the rest of the agenda, so I don't want to take up the whole time, but I would be happy to sit with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rosalie? Kyle?
I don't know if it's really a question for Rosalie, but just more of a statement about at least what I was thinking when we were talking about developing this tool and looking at these individual sites. It wasn't really, for me, it wasn't about pitting a site against each other, but since their curriculum and methods are so different, it's to look at what's the most effective method, and if we're going to fund it, we should fund the most effective method.
I agree.
And not fund something that does well and improves. If we're going to spend money, we should do it in a way that's the most effective. And I was just doing quick numbers, but Site A had an improvement of 3.1, Site 2, 0.9, Site 3, 1.8, Site 4, 0.5. The range of improvements, although they all did improve, are great. And I think it's a good starting point, but I think that we need to take it and figure out why that is and whether or not we should look to increase the sites that are performing better, because we're talking about ultimately educating our students, not whether or not a site has our students or not, that they're good or bad, but where they're performing for our students, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. And I think if we can develop a tool to do that, to make sure not only the accountability factor, but also that we're selecting, we have so many curriculums to look at, which one's the best for our students, and should we eliminate some of those and focus on curriculums that are more effective.
We actually have two. We have 2 curriculums.
Oh, they do. But there's such a difference in sites. I mean, as far as scoring, and that could be students, and it could be a lot of other things. But looking at what's causing that in the long term.
Right, I totally agree with you. And one of the things we would need to clear first is to have the same assessor assess all sites.
Yeah, that would be.
So, I mean,
And it
just to make sure that, you know, to ensure the fidelity of the data.
And you had mentioned the intangible, or at least I call them intangible items that you said. I think those are important for our students, but I think it's possible for us to come up with a way of evaluating that. I don't know. I mean, just off the top of my head, not being expert, maybe not having it in a way that's it's like test scores, but you know, having a scale of 1 to 4 where you're having someone evaluate how the kids are doing, generally speaking, how they're interacting in the beginning of the year, towards the end of the year, and have some type of way of evaluating that, just to make sure, you know, that we know, you know, they are improving in some of those areas.
Certainly, certainly.
It's something we need to continue to look at. I know it wouldn't be a hard and fast number like you would get out of a test, but it still might be useful to look at some method of evaluating those things, even if it was just, it would be more subjective, I guess, but it still could be useful.
Right, certainly. I'd be glad to work on that.
But thank you for that.
Okay? Anything else?
Is our certification requirements, I mean, there's a teacher certification requirement at the pre-K level for sure.
Yes.
I mean, just you know, very roughly, I mean, are the community schools staffed in a comparable way?
They have to be in order for us to be reimbursed by the state. We have, everyone who's a teacher in a classroom has to have a birth to 5 teaching certificate through the state. It's a you know, just like a K to 8 or a K to 12, whatever. It's a birth to 5. It's not easy to get. It's difficult. I have a master's in early childhood education, and I had to take 4 more courses to get an 081. It's not a walk in the park. And the ed techs have to be ed tech 2s. And again, the community sites are bound by stricter regulations than your school sites are. They have to meet state of Maine licensing regulations. There's certain things that they have to be step 4 on the quality rating scale in the state of Maine, which there's a lot of hoops to jump through for that. And all of our sites are all step 4s. They have to be. And I'm pretty proud of our sites, actually. They've all gone through the NACE accreditation. They're step 4. They have 081 teachers or conditional teachers that are going for their 081, which is allowed. We're doing pretty well as far as keeping track of all of that.
Any other questions for Rosalie? Okay, well, thanks for coming in. This
thank
data
you.
is good stuff, and that's helpful. That gives us a good start. So.
All right, and thank you again for your support.
Yep. All right. Committee reports. Item 8.0, we'll begin with Facilities Committee report. 8.1, I'll turn that over to Bill.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and forgive me for being late this evening. Facilities is up to speed in terms of the ad hoc elementary school committee. We now have representation from all of the communities which have elementary schools, Rouseck being one that is not currently represented. You may have seen on the website that PowerPoint has been put together, concentrating on Harriman, on the various aspects of the system's approach to this issue. I think it's pretty darn well done. The ad hoc committee has had a chance to review it prior to its publication and being put out on the website. So that will be the jumping off point, a presentation of that PowerPoint for the hopefully very spirited discussion with folks in the various communities. This is of the community meetings have already been scheduled with the assistance of our ad hoc committee members and the PTAs of each of the schools. The first will be on May 28th, coming right up at Phipsburg Elementary School at 5:30 in the evening. The Bath Schools Combined PTA will be meeting on June 10th at 6:30. I'm not sure of that location yet. I'll have to check with Patrick on that. This school will be meeting on June 12th at 6:30, Woolwich Central School. And West Bath has presented 3 alternative dates, apparently, where they would like to schedule the meeting, and Patrick and the West Bath PTA member have not yet solidified that particular date. But very receptive. The committee is enthusiastic. Parents from the various schools and representing the PTOs. And we've encouraged them to go back to their groups and to their schools, and we've encouraged the principals as well to try and encourage community folks to come to these meetings and be very open and candid about their opinions and their feelings and where they would like to see our elementary education go in the future.
Any questions for Bill on that particular committee, subcommittee, I guess? Okay. Anything else? Sounds like you guys have been busy. Anything else going on with facilities?
Well, Harriman, of course, is overseeing the implementation of the bond issue projects, and a determination is currently being made in light of the recent communication from DOE about Morse. Determination, or an ongoing determination, is being made of which projects have to be done. And others may be able to be not discarded, but slowed as we've gather more information from DOE about the actual progress of the Morse project. But that's ongoing. Certain projects, the windows will be done. The fire escape will be. There are some projects that are just jump right out at you, and you know that they have to be accomplished to keep our students safe in the school. Other things are being looked at, let's just say, with an eye towards, do we really need to do it? And contingent upon how the project moves forward with state funding, we will have to make a decision as to which projects, and I'm sure Patrick will be bringing those forward to the board as decisions are made.
Any questions for Bill on what's happening with the bond? I just had one. It's more of a request. I would ask that the board receive a list. We know what projects we had talked about funding initially when we proposed to the public. I'd like to see a list within the next 30 days of what we plan on accomplishing, because school's going to be over in a couple of weeks, and some of these projects,
Diving right in.
they're going to be diving right in, and I don't want to wait until a July meeting to find out that somewhere somebody's making a recommendation that we should or shouldn't do something. I think that that should come from the board. So I'd like to see that list. If it's coming from Harriman, then make the request to Harriman, but that we see a list from them soon saying, here's what we recommend we go ahead with. These are things that we're considering that maybe you shouldn't do. And I'll be frank, one of my sort of pet projects on that list, I shouldn't say pet project, but one that continues to come up again and again and again, is there's been concern about possibly not funding the new science facilities at Morse. And I personally feel that that would be a mistake. But I'd like to have the option for the board to have that discussion. I don't want to be told, in July, well, we just don't have the time, and so we've recommended that we not do this. I think it's important that the board make those decisions, and I just throw that out as one example, so.
Yeah, I'm sure that Patrick and Dave are meeting on a regular basis around this issue, and they have consulted with Harriman about it. And nothing will be stricken from my perspective, will be stricken from our overall list without informing the board and allowing the board an opportunity to participate in that decision. That would be my recommendation to Patrick and will be my recommendation.
Great, no, that sounds good. Jennifer?
Maybe I could add one more part to Tim's request, would be that if there are recommendations based upon, not doing something or the priority of things, could we also have a kind of a timeline on when they think that, that school funding project would come into existence? Because I've talked to folks up at DOE, and I mean, like, you're talking about building the new school, right? Am I correct on that? Yeah, they have like a general time frame when that might happen, and it might be good for us to see if we don't do this now, here's when we expect to have new school construction. It might help a little bit in that decision making. I don't know. I mean, it would be, because that new school construction sounds like it's really far off. I mean,
It's at a minimum, if we were to get, complete approval right now, which we don't have that yet, but everything is telling us we're going in that direction, we're talking 5 to 6 years out.
right.
And again, just to share with the board, I had this discussion with Patrick, because I know if you guys recall, one of the things that I had requested was that there be another committee formed to discuss within the public, or at least begin the discussion about, if we were to get funded, would we look at building on-site, some form of renovation, or off-site? And I had hoped that that committee would have been formed and met, and meetings would have happened prior to hearing anything from the state. But it didn't work that way. And I had conversations with Patrick the other day, and he told me that he's talked to the state, and now that we are being considered in the next funding cycle, the state has strongly recommended that we not have those meetings. So I find it a little frustrating, but I'm going to go by the state's recommendation. I don't know why we can't have those discussions, but they don't want us to, because they feel that it may somehow impede the process, and they like to drive the process. But to answer your question, it's 5 or 6 years. If they told us today, you've got the money, essentially a 5 or 6 year process. By the time you identify an architect and an engineer and decide on blueprints or a site and go through that whole process, 5 to 6 years till completion.
That's the earliest.
That is the earliest.
So if we're looking at questioning, should we do some of these things in the bond, perhaps like for the science lab, or should we also look at earliest and other alternatives, how long it might take?
Yeah.
I mean, it could
Worst
take-
case, best
Yeah,
case.
Yeah, and so then that would help me understand how to prioritize some of those things, if some of those things are to, take a lower priority. If I was looking at 5 years, I might make one decision, but if I'm looking at 10, I might make a totally different one. So it would be nice to know on that spectrum where those things come from, I think, for me personally.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Next, 8.2, Finance Committee report. I'll turn this over to Steve.
The Finance Committee met earlier this month and concluded our discussions on the budget. As everyone's aware, the district-wide budget meeting is scheduled for May 27th, and the budget validation referendum for June 10th. I've suggested that our next Finance Committee meeting be pushed off to June 12th, partially for my own schedule, but also it will fall outside the validation referendum. We'll know where we are at that point. I think the committee has worked pretty hard over the last several months and has produced a budget that we hope the community will support.
Any questions for Steve on finance? Okay, thank you. Turn this over to Kyle for item 8.3, West Bath Withdrawal Committee.
The newest update, I guess, for the rest of the board probably knows, the first initial proposal was drafted and sent, and I believe was received by Patrick, and I believe that the subcommittee form for the RSU board has it, if I understand correctly. And we're just continuing on the process of building a budget for a standalone West Bath at this point. And hopefully in the next week or two we'll have an initial one at least. I think that's where we are. So that's about it for today.
Any questions for Kyle on status of that committee? Okay, thank you. And again, just for clarification, what has been submitted to the RSU is their initial proposal for withdrawal. Patrick has that, attorneys are reviewing it, an attorney is reviewing it, but I think that's available at central office if anyone wants to take a look at it. Is that true, Judy? She doesn't know. Okay.
It is available at West Bath Town Office currently, so I don't know if it is at central office, but you can go to the town office.
Is it up on the website?
It is not. It is not. You have to go to the town office to get it.
Yeah.
So no, it's not up on the website. And the other thing is to consider is that just making sure that everybody knows that, you know, on the side of the committee, they've just begun to start looking at it. I'm not speaking for the committee members on this that are part of that on the board, but just to be clear that everybody realizes they're going to need time to look at this, as we took weeks and months to get to where we were. So the expectation is that, you know, we wouldn't hear response back. I just wanted to make that clear to other citizens, that to give the rest of the board time to digest that and review it. So and that process may take a few weeks before there's another step. So I just want to make sure that the expectations aren't going to move a little quicker than that.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 9.0, Superintendent's Report. Judy, turn it over to you.
Yes, we have a lot of good news tonight, and it's a good thing we don't get tired of congratulating people, because Kyle Hitella deserves a couple more congratulations tonight. He was given an award as the 2014 Presidential Scholar, and one man and one woman from each state are identified, and more than 3,900 qualified for this, so that is a huge deal. And the other huge deal is he's a National Merit Scholar, and will get a $2,500 scholarship toward his first year at Yale. He was one of 2,500 from an initial pool of 15,000. So, congratulations, Kyle. I have a feeling we're going to someday say we knew him when. The second thing is Eric Varney, who's actually in the room tonight, was identified as the Saginaw County Teacher of the Year. And there were 376 teachers nominated across the state. And there's quite a process they go through. And Eric, a science teacher at Morse, was chosen for Saginaw County. And so from here, I believe they choose 8 semifinalists, and then 4, and then down to the choice for the state. So congratulations, Eric. And one more, congratulations to the BMS robotics team. They competed at the robot track meet at Memorial Middle School in South Portland. 2 2 of our students took first place in the steeplechase competition, and another took 3rd place in table clearing competition. And I think all of the robots performed quite well. So congratulations to BMS students.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Congratulations to everyone named. We will now move on to financial report, item 9.2, and I'll turn this over to Ruth Moore.
Okay, tonight's report is for the month of April, and you'll notice bottom line that we're pretty much the same as what we were in the prior month, although there were some changes within the cost centers. One of the bigger ones was for the special ed instruction line. Previously, I had not heard much from the state about the main care issue, and so I was projecting that we would have a bit left in that account, but this last month I did speak to someone up there. They are working very hard to get caught up, and they are in hopes of being caught up to the 3rd quarter by the end of this month. So I'm projecting that with what we had budgeted, that most of that would be paid out for main care. And then, let me see, another change was in the student and staff support. Once again, this is the line where staff development substitutes are, and as we get closer to the end of the year, we're spending less in that account. And also, not as many people have signed up, teachers have signed up for classes, and that's one of the places where the class tuition reimbursement is in that line. And there's the maintenance line. It finally is starting to warm up a little bit, so we're not spending quite as much on oil, but I do anticipate Dave Richards trying to spend that line down as much as possible. So overall, on the expense side, we're pretty much at the same level, and the revenue side, again, about the same. We had 2 or 3 reimbursements, refunds come in on just left my head. Well, I can't remember what it was, but it was a couple of $1,000s anyway, so it has brought us again to coming in pretty flat on revenues. So if anybody has
Any questions for Ruth? Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, for old business, we'll begin with 10.1, review of board goals. Is there anything anyone wanted to add to current goals? Okay. Then we'll move on to second reading of policies. We'll begin with 10.2, second reading of policy DD, grants. You had 2 policies from last time. One was the current RSU1 policy, and then the second is the MSMA proposed policy. Is there a motion on, I'm assuming we're making a motion on the MSMA proposed policy?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Is there a motion regarding this policy?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved to approve by Bill, seconded by Dave. Any further discussion on this? Okay, I just have some questions, and again, I apologize because I wasn't here at the last meeting. Anywhere in this policy, does it address the fact, does it ask the question, Are we able to meet the needs and requirements of the grant, such as matching funds, any special obligations, etc.? Is that addressed adequately in this policy?
Third paragraph, I think it covers it.
Third paragraph notes some of those requirements. It falls to the superintendent to advise the board.
Sounds like the superintendent would have to bring it to us,
Okay.
and we would have to approve matching funds or additional personnel.
Because that brings me to my second question. In that fourth paragraph, it says, the superintendent may present the grant application or proposal to the board for its approval. And I don't know how the board feels, if it's necessary for us to see all applications, or if we leave it to the superintendent's discretion. I think my concern is we encourage grant writing within the district. At the same time, we don't want to get bound to some grant that requires us to make changes or extend something over time. And I just, on one hand, you want to rely on the superintendent to make those recommendations. On the other hand, you don't want to be bound as a board to any requirements that a grant may have that we may not necessarily be able to live up to.
I've seen it written sometimes where you have a minimum or a maximum amount, like grants over such and such come directly to the board, and those under that might be superintendent's discretion. So you may consider.
Actually, there's
Here.
conflicting language here, I think, isn't there? The first paragraph, the last sentence says that all grant applications are approved by the board prior to submission. Right, and then in the fourth paragraph, it says the superintendent may present the grant application or proposal to the board for its approval. I don't know how those two.
You change the may to must.
Shall.
Both will be
shall.
consistent. or
Just put shall, yeah.
And they'll both be consistent.
So Bill, would you be willing to amend?
Absolutely, yep.
So amend your motion to approve with a change in the fourth paragraph from may to shall.
Shall.
And that at least requires every grant proposal to come before the board.
That's fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve as amended, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. We'll move on to item 10.3, second reading of policy DJA, purchasing authority. Is there a motion on this policy?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Alan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Okay, item 10.4, policy EBBB, accident reports. Is there a motion on this policy?
Motion to approve.
Move to approve by Dave,
Second.
second by Bill. Any further discussion? Again, I just had one question, and I don't even know if this would fall into this. It may be a question for technology, but I think that this policy deals almost exclusively with personal injury accidents or accidents to property damage, and then it says in parentheses, including school buses. I'm wondering if computers would fall under this policy, or if we have a different policy regarding computers. I know that, with laptops and the tablets within districts around the state, there's always an issue around damage and maintenance. Would it be beneficial to add language like that, or is that covered under another policy?
I think it's covered under another policy, but there's nothing lost by adding it to this. If it includes school buses, it also could include computers.
What if we were to just add that, including school buses and computers?
If it's somewhere else, it's never hurt.
Would you be willing to amend that to
Yeah.
include? So we'd add that addition in parentheses. It should read, including school buses and computers. And again, those are just examples, but I think we have an awful lot of computers or technology in the school.
Tim, if you wanted to do that, though, would you also need to amend the accident reporting form to indicate that somewhere on that?
Here's the thing, it's interesting. It says all accidents involving injury to students must be reported. So in the second paragraph, it addresses personal property, but then the balance of the policy deals primarily with personal injury. It doesn't necessarily address personal property. So there's no requirement, unless I'm missing it here, there's no requirement regarding personal property.
For reporting?
Right.
Should there be? Should there be a reporting form for that?
Well, again, it doesn't necessarily apply to this form, and I think we do have forms within the district that apply to computers, that if a computer's damaged, there's a report you have to file. So again, it says the policy requires reports to be filed, but it's not this report. This report only applies to injury to students, personal injury, not property injury.
I think if you wanted to add computers, then we should also amend the cross-reference and cross-reference what other policy where that form is. And in all matters of technology, I defer to Dean's wisdom, so it would be great for him to be able to say, here's where else this happens, and this is how you want to report it, or this is what the implications of that are.
Maybe we should just kick this back and have Dean take a look at it.
Yeah?
Take a look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take a look at what we've got already in terms of property,
Okay.
computers and so forth. And see how
So
they-
let's kick this
see how
back
they
and
match up.
let technology take a look at this and see if we need to work that in.
I withdraw the motion.
So the motion has been withdrawn. All right. So file that until next time.
Do we need to make a motion to do that?
We can always vote on the current motion that's on the floor, and then a motion can be made to table this until the next meeting.
Oh.
So we can do that.
I'm not saying we need to, I was just,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
So why don't we do that? Let's make, the original motion has been withdrawn. Is somebody willing to make a motion to table this till the next meeting?
So moved.
Okay. Jennifer makes the motion to table, seconded by Alan. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to table? None opposed, so this is tabled until next time. Thank you. Item 10.5. Second reading of policy EB, environmental and safety programs. Is there a motion on this policy?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Alan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. This was one of my favorites. Second reading of policy ECB, pest management in school facilities and on school grounds.
Doesn't refer to students.
No, it was pretty clear about that. Is there a motion on this policy?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Jennifer. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Alan. Any further discussion? No discussion about pest management in school facilities. I just wanted to say it one more time. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, item 10.7, policy EBCC, bomb threats. Is there a motion on this policy?
I have a question first. Do I have to wait for a motion?
Make a motion and then in further discussion.
I make a motion that we table this.
Okay? There's a motion to table this until next meeting?
Yes.
Okay?
Can I speak to my motion?
We need a second.
Oh, sorry.
I'll second.
Alan will second. Okay.
Thank you for helping me out with procedure. According to my notes, we had decided not to bring this forward during the last policy committee. We had one of our people from our policy committee absent that day, and we were struggling with some wording. I did leave the meeting before we were done, but my notes were specific that we had decided not to bring this forward to first reading, to action. And I think Dave agrees with that, so I think we should table this and have a little more work on it with our policy committee.
Any other comments on this? Questions? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to table this until the next meeting. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Do we have anyone opposed? None opposed. Okay. Table till next meeting. Okay, item 10.8. Second reading of policy EBCD, school cancellation, postponement, early dismissal. You have two policies in front of you, the current RSU1 policy and then the MSMA proposed policy. Do I have a motion on the MSMA proposed policy?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Dave.
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Steve, I'm sorry.
I just question the practicality of conducting afternoon or evening co- and extracurricular practices or activities if school has been dismissed and the conditions, road conditions improve. I mean, is that really a practical thing to do, that kids, that we can adequately notify participants in those programs that they will be conducted even though school has been dismissed for the day? And then for those kids who rely on bus transportation or other forms of transportation, that they'll be able to get back to the school to participate. It just doesn't seem practical to me, but I don't.
Well, there is discretion built into that. Move to, in paragraph 5.1, to move forward with the co-curricular activities if the principal or the coaches or designees feel it's feasible for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a philosophical problem with this. I just don't see it as being a practical option. You know, school's dismissed. You've sort of lost contact with the student, but to suggest, we'll do football, for example, to to suggest that you're going to call 60 or 70, contact 60 or 70 participants in a program and get them back to school, it just doesn't seem practical. But, you know, if folks are okay with it, folks are okay.
Yeah, I like to see the discretion left there because I was a high school athletic director and the school that I was working at was a regional school. So many of the problems which would exist here in calling students back existed for me. And we were able to run some activities. You know, if it clears at noontime and the roads are, well, in Bath, they put enough salt on them, they're always clear. You could get the kids back, especially varsity athletics, because the kids generally are old enough to drive and are not dependent upon buses or their parents to get them back to school. So leaving it there, I don't think it's going to hurt anything. And, you know,
I had a similar concern, but I felt, because, I mean, my concern was using the example of basketball. What if there's an away game? Is the discretion, is it up to our discretion to determine if something like that is canceled, or then does it fall in the hands of the other school? But I felt that the word may, after 5 p.m., may proceed according to schedule at the discretion of the principal. I don't know what the alternative would be, because the other alternative would be we would say it's canceled. We could not say it will happen. So it's either it's canceled or it may happen, and then we leave it to the administrators to implement that however they see fit.
Yeah, right.
You know, I think it would be, the only other option we would have as a board would be to say, just eliminate that and say, if school's canceled, the events are canceled.
yeah.
At least in this instance, as kids are going out the door and somebody's watching the radar, they do have that ability to say, but this will still be on, or vice versa. They say, this isn't going to happen, but it's in their hands. It's their determination.
And we don't want to be arbitrary about it either.
No.
I have sufficient confidence in our leadership that they're not going to place our students in jeopardy. They'll make common sense decisions.
Yeah, I think Steve's concern was just how do you contact them, but that's their job.
In
They got to
today's
figure that
world,
out. Right.
you text them all.
Any further discussion? Any other questions or comments on that?
One question or
Go
I guess
ahead.
comment I had was it seems like very complex for such a simple task, and like 5.1 and 5.2 is like, you know, the things will be canceled but may go on depending if things clear up. It seems like there's a lot of complexity for such a simple issue, and it could be solved in about a paragraph if we just leave it up to the discretion of the superintendent and the principal to decide, because ultimately that's what's happening here anyways. But there's a lot of verbiage that seems to be very confusing to me. For instance, if something is scheduled at 5 o'clock and the weather clears at 5, if it's 4:59, then they're not allowed to have that discretion. I mean, I know you have to draw a line somewhere, but if we're going to give them discretion, why don't we just give them discretion and stop and not give them a hard fast number like 5 p.m. and 11 a.m. and you know what I mean? It seems to me if we're going to, I don't have a problem with philosophically with the principals and the superintendent making that decision to continue after the fact and have these events, but it seems very limiting and complex. But if that's, I mean, if the administration wants to deal within this thing, that's fine. I'm okay with that too, but it seems complex for what needs to be done.
Any additional thoughts on that?
Tim, I think a lot of times we get a lot of kickback from the community about decisions one way or the other, and sometimes I think it's good to have the wording in the policy to back the superintendent's decision up. So I would suggest you keep it.
Okay. you fine with that, Kyle?
I mean, if he wants to, yeah, if he wants to live in that world, that's fine. It seems really complex for what that looking at. If it'll help him, if that,
Yeah.
if Judy's saying it'll help him, then I'm okay with that too.
It's ironic because as I go back and read it, I see what you're saying. You could pretty much state it in one sentence. It's up to the superintendent or administrator's discretion, but at the same time, it might be nice to have those parameters that that decision was made not only because of their discretion, but also because of this language.
Policy.
Yeah.
I just, where it says, I guess the event's after 5 p.m., but,
Right.
if something, it's like 11:01, it's dismissed, it goes into another rule that may be more limiting, but it's okay, I understand it. The point is to make it easier for the administration to handle these situations, and then I'm okay with it. It just seems complex.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, item 10.9, second reading of policy EGAD, copyright compliance. Is there a motion on this policy? No motion?
I'll move acceptance.
Move to accept by Alan.
I'll second.
Second by Jennifer. Any further discussion?
Just boilerplate.
Yeah.
Yeah, figures.
All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Okay, second reading of policy EFC. This is item 10.10, free and reduced price food program. Is there a motion on this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, move to approve by Dave, second by Bill. Any further discussion? I just have a question. Are there any implications? Oh, I had one addition, which was to add the word all in front of parents in the second paragraph. And I think that corresponds to some of the policies we'll be looking at today, first reading. So it says all parents shall be advised that this program. And then I had a question about the third paragraph. Can anybody, maybe Judy, can you speak to the implications of that third paragraph? Are there any consequences? Is that something we encounter often? What are the implications if we approve that?
I think it's the human thing to do, basically, and I think we're bound by law to actually feed children, so.
Is this something that occurs on a regular basis? Is this something that...
I don't think it happens that often, but I would have to check with Ellen on that. Or maybe Tom has some.
I don't have a copy.
Oh, you don't know?
I can read it to you. In accordance with the guidelines for participation in these programs and in accordance with the wishes of the board, no child who a teacher believes is improperly nourished shall be denied a lunch or other food simply because proper application has not been received from his or her parent or guardian. Again, I think it's a wonderful sentiment, just wondering what the implications of that, if that ever occurs, from a practical standpoint in the schools.
It does occur. We do provide a peanut butter sandwich to the child who's not starved. But they don't get access to the same meal. They have a supplemental one.
Okay.
So we make contact with the parents who work for that.
Okay, good.
So we do that.
All right, thank you. So Dave, do you mind if we just make the amendment to add the word all?
At all? No, not at all.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on this policy?
Speaking to what you had said, just in the thought of it after you had said it, are we, if it doesn't happen, are we tracking that somehow to understand, how often this is happening?
We could check with Ellen on it, or we could check with the
Maybe we can,
administrators.
yeah. I think it'd be good to know.
Yeah.
At least, if not, we may have to have some kind of outreach to make sure that we do more of the first or the second paragraph happens more often, to make sure it's not something that we're dropping the ball on, to make sure these parents are applying or what have you, just to make sure that's being handled.
Any other questions, comments on this policy? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve with the amended adding the word all in the second paragraph before parents. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, we'll move on to new business. And I'll turn this over to Judy. We have 2 personnel items, a report and then an action.
Katrina Barter is being nominated for the school nurse at Morse High School. She's an internal candidate and has been the nurse between Fisher Mitchell and Dyke Newell. And let's see, where's the other one? Is that the?
I think this one is an action item, so this would fall under 11.2. So
that's the only.
that's the only non-actionable personnel item. We'll move on to 11.2. We have a number of nominations, one of which was added to you today. Typically, we either take these as a whole, or we can take them individually. I guess someone could make a motion to that extent, one way or the other.
I move we accept the nominations that have been presented by the superintendent.
So as a whole,
As a group.
as a group.
Sure.
Second by Bill. Any discussion? Go ahead, Kyle.
Just curious about the Fisher Mitchell principal, and maybe I wasn't aware of this, but from the applications and the interviews, it looks like we only have 2 applications. This wasn't posted, there was no formal committee formed, and I was just wondering if you could explain why we haven't been following the normal procedure. No, it's okay. The normal procedure, don't want me to keep asking the question, do you? The normal procedure for how we've handled principals in the past, I guess, and why there was a change.
Whatever.
And you know I was wondering what I was going on.
Yes. We decided, Patrick and I decided that because we had just been through a search and the applicant, we didn't get that many applicants for the Woolwich position, and that we felt that we had some internal candidates who might be interested, that we did post it in-house before we went out. We had decided that if we did not find anybody in-house, that we would certainly post it out of district. But we had 2 in-house candidates apply, and we interviewed both of those candidates, and we felt that Ross was a suitable candidate.
The other thing I can add to that is, because I did have a discussion with Patrick, he called me on this, and because we've had, because Carrie had only been there a year, so we've gone a situation where we've had a fair amount of turnover in terms of administration there. It was important, both from a district standpoint and a staffing standpoint, to try and get that position filled as quickly as possible, so that there was a certain level of continuity and comfort for the staff that was at Fisher Mitchell. Some folks there did express a little bit of concern as we're wrapping up this year as to who, would be leading them going into next year. So I think part of that was the motivating factor as well. So. Okay, there is a motion on the floor that we accept the candidates as a whole, as a group, or the nominations. All those in favor of that?
Just a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
You identify we're doing pre-K at Woolwich.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
that
who was
was
it?
the addition to the agenda that was on your
It's here.
Sally Monroe.
It was handed out to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so just for clarification's sake, let's do it this way. There's a motion right now to approve the group as a whole. If we approve that motion, then we'll nominate the group as a whole, and we'll go down and name all of the individuals so that we're clear about who it is we're nominating. But currently, there is a motion on the floor when we approve, to approve as a whole. So all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed. So we will be approving this group as a whole. Again, for clarification's sake, I'll just run down what we're talking about. The nominations are, and if I get somebody's name incorrect, I apologize in advance. Ross Berkowitz, Principal for Fisher Mitchell. Kyle Beaton, 7/8 Language Arts, Woolwich Central School. Jeff Schertz, Math Teacher, Morse High School. Jennifer Williams, Spanish Teacher, Morse High School. Heather Monson, Art Teacher, Morse High School. Kelly Duffy, Social Studies Teacher, Morse High School. Emily Powers, K-1 Teacher, Phippsburg. Tanya Pomerlow, 3rd Grade Teacher, Fisher Mitchell. Sarah Ensworth, 3rd Grade Teacher, Fisher Mitchell. And Sally Monroe, Pre-K Teacher, Woolwich Central School. Did I get everybody's name the best I could do?
We have a number of those teachers right here. Might be nice to put a face to a name. Like Sally's right behind you. Sally, stand up.
Great. Hi.
Kyle Beaton right over here. Your language arts teacher. Any others?
I'm Jen Williams from Wisconsin.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, you wouldn't have told me if I butchered your name anyway. But if I did, I apologize. So we have those nominations. Is there a motion to accept all of those nominations?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, moved by Alan, seconded by Jennifer. Any further discussion? Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate you coming in. All those in favor of the motion to approve, please raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Welcome to RSU1. Okay, item 11.3. First reading of board policies. Those were emailed to you and you have hard copies in front of you. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. This is not an action item. Food service programs, regulations. Any comments, questions on that one? Personnel goals, priority objectives, policy GA. Any questions, comments on that one? I found this a very odd policy, and I would ask that the policy committee really look this over, and I'm looking for a strong explanation on why we have this one. Next one, staff involvement in decision-making. Any comments, questions on this? And that is it for the policies that we have. Okay, item 11.4, first reading of job descriptions. Again, this is not an action item. Let me just get caught up. Okay, we will begin with item 11.4A, business manager, bookkeeper.
You know, the title says budget manager,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but the thing on the,
right.
says business manager.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, is this coming, are these job descriptions coming from Patrick or are they coming from policy committee? I'm assuming they're coming from Patrick.
They are, and they've been drafted by Patrick, and then he's talked to each of the individual people who are involved in those positions at the current time and gotten feedback from them, and this is the result.
Okay. So these will go back to Patrick. We will be making motions on them next meeting. I had for the budget or business manager, I had one change. I wanted to suggest adding some of the language that was from the Director of Special Services, and this would be number 30, which says, assumes an active role as a member of the administrative team, providing input to district-wide decision-making. I think that our business manager in particular, so much of what we do, the decisions that we make are driven by finances. I would encourage Patrick to add that to the job description, because I didn't get that from this job description. Any other additions, changes, comments?
As long as I've been here, it seems like Ruth always makes a presentation to us at every meeting about the state of finances in the district, and I was just wondering if that's something that would be included as part of the responsibility. I skimmed the list and I didn't see it as a point.
It's interesting you bring that up. There's within the board for a number of years, there's been a tug of war about that. It used to be Patrick that presented that, or the superintendent that presented that. The superintendent always wanted a board member to present it. And ultimately, it's fallen to the business manager, but I think the business manager would gladly turn that back over to the board.
Oh.
So I think we're still fighting over that one as to whose responsibility it is. Okay, any other questions or comments on that particular job description? Okay, item 11.4B, Director of Special Services. Questions, additions on that one? I just had one, within the job goal, I didn't know if Patrick wanted to add something that spoke to fiscal responsibility. Again, I don't know if that falls within the responsibility of special services, but you know, as we've discussed with the board, that's a big part of our budget, and I'm hoping that individual is both looking at the financial side and the services side. Another question I had is, are there any other certifications or certificates that are required under qualifications? No? Okay. I did have some more questions on this one. I'm going to keep rolling. On number 11, it says evaluates on an ongoing basis the total special education program, curriculum procedures, and individual student needs and achievements. Would we want to include staff? There's a number of staff that fall under this individual. On number 16, is it necessary that the special ed director arrange for transportation of all children placed in special classes? The same thing with 19, maintains a permanent inventory of equipment purchased for special education.
You know the numbering is off. What 16 are you talking about?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
What are you talking about, 16 and 16?
The second 16
Okay.
and the only 19. Kyle brings up a good point. We might want to get our numbering system correct in here.
Other 16.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you're here, Kaya.
So,
I thought I was losing it.
Just another nitpicky thing, under the job goal, I think there's a subject verb agreement. Education, appropriate educational program for students that supports, instead of that support the mission.
so add an S.
Yep.
Support. Thank you. Under job goal. Any other questions, comments, additions, omissions? This one really went on and on. I can understand now why,
Somebody walks on water.
right, why Sharon demands or encourages the board to create an assistant position. Okay, we will move on to 11.4C, Career and Technical Education Director. Any questions, comments on this one? Okay. Item 11.4D, Facilities Director. No comments?
I think, did the pest management policy defer to the facilities director?
It made the facilities director the
Right.
head of that program.
IPM.
Yeah.
Manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pest management managers.
So do we have that in here, that if he's going to be a director of that, is there a certification or a specialty or a knowledge that speaks to that? Would we need that?
That's a good point.
It's not a certification.
But we just want to we may want to add that as one of the responsibilities since it was part of policy. Anything else on this one? Okay. And then 11.4E, teacher. Any comments, questions, additions on this one? Judy?
Patrick did work with the SEA on this.
Again, I was surprised that this one wasn't more extensive, but I did notice that there wasn't any mention, and I don't know if, as an RSU, if we would want this as a performance responsibility, but something about, ability to work collaboratively or being able to work as part of a team. I know that's something that we encourage within the district. I think it's something that we would want to be part of a job description. Anything else here on teacher?
Just that,
Go ahead, Bill.
would not a job description for a teaching position be subject to negotiation?
I think it is to some extent, but as Judy said, the SEA has seen this,
Okay.
so everything falls within.
They've reviewed it.
They've reviewed
so
it.
It falls within.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm still on it.
That's okay. And I did have one other thing with a teacher. Item number 16, I don't know how necessary that is. It seemed a little arbitrary to me. Makes effective use of available resources. I think that, you know, any job description could have that. Okay, we'll move on to item 11.5, out-of-state field trip request from Fisher Mitchell, 5th grade. This is an action item. Move to approve by Steve.
I'll second it.
Second by Alan. Any further discussion, questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. We'll move on to item 12.0, public comment. You're good? Come on. All right. I want to just, since I wasn't here at the last meeting, I'm going to disrupt this meeting completely and drag this out as long as I can.
You only have 19 minutes.
Right. I need to know, there was a presentation made from Great Schools Partnership, and I need to know from the board, I just had some questions for the board regarding that presentation. Now I've lost my questions.
I got out too long.
Okay. Do you feel, based on the presentation, that that consultant or that group or that individual is serving the district well? Are we being served well by Great Maine Schools Partnership? Do we feel that we're getting bang for our buck?
Feedback from staff seemed to indicate that they were very pleased with this effort.
Okay. That answered another question. Does the staff seem to support it? Was there any discussion in that presentation about the direction the district's going to head with regard to a proficiency-based diploma? Or has that decision not been made yet?
I don't think it's been made yet.
I think that's a work in progress. That was the impression that I got.
I asked the question how those two things were.
Would you speak into the mic just so we get this on camera?
I asked the question at the time of presentation as to how those two things would integrate, and particularly with the performance. The answer was that they were integral. That is, they were coordinated together, or at least that was my understanding of the answer.
Okay. Judy?
I think what Dave's talking about being coordinated is the standards and proficiency-based, how those two things were coordinated. And a proficiency-based diploma is based upon the standards that we set locally within the parameters of the Maine Learning Results. And that's what's a work in progress. We haven't totally identified as a school what standards we're going to have for graduation, but we're definitely moving in that direction.
Judy, I know that it's been controversial, and I honestly don't know what the status is with Morse. I know we're required, I think, 2018 to go to a proficiency-based diploma.
Yes.
What is the sentiment among the staff and among the administration regarding a proficiency-based report card?
Well, a proficiency-based diploma and a proficiency-based report card are two different things.
Okay. So we can still have a proficiency-based diploma without a proficiency-based
Yes.
report card?
Yes.
Do we have policy in the district that dictates what the report card, I think we do have policy that dictates the grading system that we use and what the report card looks like. I just want to be able to make sure that the board is clear and that the community is clear that there is that distinction between the report card and the diploma, and that just because we have a proficiency-based diploma, we have not made any decisions to go to a proficiency-based report card.
Right, and there are a whole set of policies that are going to be coming to you at some point about all of this proficiency-based stuff. And I think that will be an opportunity to clarify that.
Because I know that there are some parents that are concerned about that.
Right.
So I would just encourage the board to just be aware of that, but know that we haven't made any decisions as a district. But I would also want to get feedback, both from the administration and from the staff at the high school, their thoughts on that, because we're going to need that guidance shortly.
And there are discussions, certainly that's been part of the discussion with our consultant from Great Schools Partnership, is what that report